Yeah, you can start presenting. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Good evening, friends, and this is Patrick, and now I'm going to present my topic, why business insolvency law. So I'll be starting with the introduction about why I have taken this topic and the overview about this, and then objectives of insolvency law and factors which are leading to this insolvency, and then in Indian perspective, I'll be dealing with, and then I'll conclude my topic. So, if we this introduction, mainly this insolvency and bankruptcy code, it has taken place from started this in 2016, and which is governed by the Indian insolvency laws, and the organizations and the individuals are both the subject to this 2016 code, and even it accommodates a period which bounds this procedure, and the debtor fails to if the debtor fails to repay a debt, then the creditor seizes the ownership of the debtors, and then the assets and must make the decisions about this indebtedness. And to ensure a continuing resolution process, the court protects the borrowers from creditors for the resolution claims. And the court also combines the present authoritative systems provisions to establish a common platform for dealing with insolvency. In if we see this Indian insolvency laws, the Indian insolvency it is governed by in bankruptcy Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. This 2016 code it applies to the organizations and also for the people. It accommodates a time period bound actually. So the procedure to determine this bankruptcy at the point when a default in reimbursement happens, this creditors gains the control over the debtors and assets and which makes this choice to determine the indebtedness inside 180 days time frame. It was a legally time bound period for this, and to guarantee a continuous resolution process, the code likewise gives the immunity to borrowers from this resolution claims for the creditors during this time period. And this code additionally combines the arrangements of the current authorities system to create a common platform to address the insolvency for the debtors and even for creditors uh, regarding leaving any specific groups. And the various institutions are framed by the court to facilitate the purpose of this insolvency. These institutions are insolvency professionals and the information utilities in insolvency professional agencies, and also this insolvency and bankruptcy rules, etc. And if we see, there are mainly three steps which is mentioned in the code to resolve this insolvency. They are the initiation and the decision to resolve the insolvency and the liquidation. And before going to see the objectives of insolvency law, we can see what is the main purpose behind this code. Actually, without this insolvency law, if any organization defaults an advance to the creditor, uh, for we can take for an example. For example, it becomes the income debtness. Each claimant would need to raise or to give a lot of the organization's benefits. This battle among its claimants could drive the organization into the liquidation, regardless of whether it has, in any case, you can take a sound plan of action, and this would prompt the super clever's demolition of the organizations and the hierarchical work and cause this work the misfortunes, and the inner grabs it all the situations would make the business to expanding the creditor risk for the creditor's perspective. And there has been also a store of laws on indebtedness preceding the IBC, which traveled the every possible way but evidentially neglected to resolve the mind-blowing insolvency issues. And the law ranged from the Presidency Town Insolvency Law Act 1909 to the Provincial Insolvency Act 1920. Then the Sikh Industrial Companies Act 1985, and many more acts has taken place. The it amended various acts like Indian Partnership Act 1932, Companies Act 2013, and Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Enforcement Security Interest Act 2002, and Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008, etc. The journey with it full of that which are unreasonably begun, anyway later neglected to very reason for which they were built up. Because it was because of our legal setup, and the defaulters began to considering that India as a safe haven for such exercises, which clearly portrayed the incompetence with the respect of our nation when contrasted with the worldwide gauges, and therefore a sound constructed insolvency and bankruptcy law created in 2008 to raise problems. See, aggregate strategy for indebtedness of goals and the rules to control the opportunistic conduct of investors and directors in region of indebtedness. And if in the absence of any insolvency law, if a company defaults on a loan to a creditor, that means which becomes a cash flow insolvent, and every claimant would have to raise or to grab its share of the company's assets. And this fight among its claimant, it could push up the company into the liquidation, even if it has an otherwise. It sounds like a business model, and this which will lead to the unnecessary destruction of the company's organization value, and even it causes like a jobless. So from the creditor's perspective, the winner grabs it in all the situations, which would make the business of expanding the creditor in more risk. So moreover, a company's shareholder or the residual claimants with the limited liability. So when the company approaches the insolvency, they have every incentive to engage in high risk strategies. And if the strategies work, then the gain from every incentive will be in upside. So if the strategy fails, if it is the creditors who lose, so the shareholders could also engage in the asset shipping and in also the related party transactions. So these risks would be aggravated if the incentives of shareholders and the managers are aligned. So the creditors would price in all these risks and and lend at the higher interest rates, hurting the borrowers. So overall, the economy would be at the worst. So as well, it was defined like a, insolvency law. It also helps in avoiding the problems like the proper purpose of such law would be to provide that the collective procedure for insolvency resolution, and also for the rules to control the opportunistic behavior of shareholders and for the managers in the vicinity of this insolvency. And it also was examined from this perspective, we can say that the recent changes which was made to the IBC was as well as for the recommendations of the ILC report to go far beyond the proper purpose of the insolvency law. And they are also an attempt to solve this problem, surrendering this IBC shareholders that are better solved outside this IBC. So, if we see the main objectives of this insolvency laws, there are two main reasons. So, first, if we take this, first objective is the predictable, equitable, and transparent allocation of risk among the participants in a market economy. So, so the accomplishment of this objective, it plays a critical role in giving the trust to the creditor system and promoting further economic growth for the benefit of all participants. For instance, we can say as a it regards as a creditor and the debtor relationship, and the creditor's ability to initiate this insolvency proceedings against a debtor as means of enforcing his claim, which reduces the risk of lending and also increases the availability of the credit and the making of investment. So, an indebtedness law um, actually it serves like for, for designate the hazards among the different creditors and accidentally to assess the borrowers. For instance, we can say that if the indebtedness law affords any secured creditors uncommon treatment or in opposite way for to the secured creditors, such treatment ensures the estimation of this security, and which might be especially the significance for these account holders that, in view of their credit hazard, which can't get the unsecured creditors. So if you see the second objective, it was like the second goal of an indebtedness law is to ensure and boost an incentive to serve every shareholder and the economy at large. So most essentially, this goal is pursued during the rehabilitation, that means restoration, when this value is maximized by continuing a viable business. So, but it's also a primary purpose to produce the liquidate companies which cannot be restored, and also for the accomplishment of a value of maximization objective, it regularly promoted by the satisfaction of the target and of equal distribution of the risk. For an example, we can take like the annulment of fraudulent transactions which took place prior to an insolvency process, which guarantees that lenders are treated equally, and so the increase of the value of the debtor's property. So the portion of the key policy decisions that need to be taken and to be made when while at the time of structuring an insolvency, which act as against one another. Side, moreover, it also says the decisions should be made on how it will be the recipients of the work when it is maximized. So it is most importantly to avoid easy when we find a way to strike the balances between the various targets described. So various targets described. So indebted individuals are not always the fraudulent or incompetent. And creditors are not always the selfish and understanding. So out of ongoing these experiences, in spite of the fact that organizations may fail in some cases, if we view of inside in the view of incompetence, or they may likewise come up with short on account of financial challenges outside their ability to control. So, uh, if you see, before seeing the factors leading to insolvency, I'd like to pose a question like, what might cause the business to become insolvent? So, the journey from the business stability to the brink of insolvency, it is like a quick process. So, we can learn to spot the warning signs delaying the bill payments because the money is not there. That can be like a start of a slippery slope, and then the debts will begin to pile up. So in such a way the insolvent can take in place. So we can see the factors. If you see, the first one is inadequate accounting or human resource personnel. So sometimes at the time of who lack the proper skills and experiences, so that may lead to insolvency. If the staff or the persons who are working for us to for our company more and experience than us, so it may also cause the insolvency. So this can lead to a proper creation and follow up of budget dilution of company resources and accomplished by inadequate revenues, and then lawsuits from the customers or business associates. So when high contingent, sorry, with very high contingent liabilities, and they may also suffer so much damage to its daily operations, which it cannot remain a viable business, and for inability to create cater to changing the customer needs. So sometimes the companies fail to evolve according to the changing needs or desires of the customers. So they tend to lose the customers who find better quality or the variety of products or services from the other companies. So the company loses the market share and thus the profits and also the developments which was in unpaid bills. If it does not adapt to the changing marketplace, then the company may take this insolvency process, and then increasing the product costs. So sometimes a business may incur the higher production or the procurement costs. So such its profit margins are significantly reduced. This is in which leads to loss of income and the company's inability which fulfill its obligations to the creditors. So there are many other things like a cash flow crisis caused by a large unforeseen expense, tax bill or purchase, and loss of business from increased competition and an unexpected drop in sales or as I said, inconsistent period of sales. So next, I'll go to this Indian perspective. So if you see this Indian perspective, the IBC Code, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, it was enacted with a view to consolidate and then amend the laws governing the insolvency and reorganization of the private companies and partnership firms and individuals in a time bound manner. So this IBC sought to replace the and which was left by the Sikh industrial companies at 1985, which it was repealed in 2003 actually, and which was the sole legislation aimed at detecting the alien companies and providing the remedial measures for their revival or amelioration. And additionally, this IBC also repealed this regime under the Companies Act 2013 of winding up of companies arising out of the benefit, default in repayment of the debt. And IBC has emerged as one of the most utilized legislations for the resolution and also for the recovery of debts. And as per this economic survey took place in 2020-21, it was like 4,117 applications has been admitted by the National Company Law Tribunal since since the implementation of this ITC on December 31st, 2020. Um, whereas the number of companies successfully liquidated as of December 2020 are 1,112 companies. So, however, with the onset of this COVID-19 pandemic year, the initiation of fresh proceedings, which was pertaining to the defaults committed on or after this 25th March 2020, it was suspended up until this March 25th, 2021. So it was done to ease the stress on the companies and then with the financial or the operational debt due to this pandemic. And so it was also notified that the defaults committed during the suspension, it shall be deemed to be permanently not existent and no proceedings can be initiated for the defaults arising between this 25th March 2020 and 25th March 2021. So this suspension has been continued till after 25th March 2021, and thus initiation of fresh proceedings for the default committed after 25th March 2021 is now allowed in accordance with the IBC. And then insolvency and bankruptcy law in India. So in India, if you take in India, in 1990s, it was focused on the freedom of entry and and in liberalization, privatization, and globalization, it was more involved, and it dismantled the license permit quota when this disciplinary license gave way to an entitlement of this registration. It also allowed the firms meeting the eligibility requirements to raise the resources without this requiring any specific approval from the state to facilitate the freedom of entry mainly. So the reforms in the 2000 focused on creating a free and fair market competitions, which also moved away from the control of monopoly to promote this competition among the firms in this marketplace. So size or the dominance per se was no longer considered bad, but also abuse was. So the reforms provide a level playing field and this comparative neutrality and thus prohibited the firms from restricting the freedom of other firms to do this business. So in the index of economic freedom, it measures the degree to which the policies and the institutions of economy are su- economy for this economic freedom. It has substantially improved for India since starting of 1990s, and the outcome has been outrageous. So the average growth rate in the post-reforms period since 1992, it has been more than double when compared to that in the pre-reforms period today. In India, it is the fastest growing one and the trillion-dollar economy and the sixth largest in the world. So the Indian economy moved from the socialism with limited entry to marketarianism without the exist, leading to the substantial cost of impeded exit. So, given that the resources are scarce, and the failures are not usual in the dynamic market in economy. India indeed codified and structured market mechanism to put under to put the resources to more efficient use continuously, and for also for free entrepreneurs from failure. So the significance of this mechanism can be guarded from the fact which it was the absence of the same which lead to some risk for the private sector enterprises to be taken over the government and to nationalize the sectors in 1960s and also in 1970s. And for this, several attempts were made to provide the legal and institutional machinery for dealing with a debt default. And these had not kept in peace with the changes in the Indian economy, while provisions for recovery action by the creditors were available through this Indian Contract Act 1872 or special laws such as on recovery of debts and bankruptcy act 1993, and also this securitization and reconstruction of financial assets and enforcement of securities interest act 2002. They did not yield or desired these outcomes. And if you see further, the action through the sick industrial companies, it is like a special provisions act 1985, and also this winding up provisions under the Companies Act 1956. They were not providing very helpful for either for recovery by lenders or for reconstructing firms. But the laws dealing with this individual insolvency, uh, namely the Presidential Towns Insolvency Act 1909, and also this Provisional Insolvency Act 1920. These all are which are not suitable for the changing needs of the time. So this hampered the confidence of the lenders and consequently uh, the debt market. So while secured creditors from banks was a predominant form of credit, this corporate debt market was yet to develop actually. So if you see the myths surrounding this code, um, the code is for the recovery of the debts due. First one. So the code actually it is not for a recovery. Actually, it is not a recovery tool for the creditors, but it is a resolution mechanism to breathe into a stressed code, and it envisages this resolution of failing at in this firm, and then the interest of the company that its promoters or the management with a primary focus to ensure the revival and the continuation of the economy by protecting it from its own management and also from the death by liquidation. So it is beneficial legislation which puts this company back on its feet. And moreover, it is not like being mere recovery legislation for the creditors. For this, we can take example as Swiss Ribbons Private Limited and another versus Union of India and others. In this, it was like if there is in this case, it was said like if there is any resolution applicant who can continue to run the firm as a going concern, or every effort must be made to try and also to see this is which is made possible. And for this, we can take another example as ArcelorMittal India Private Limited versus Satish Kumar Gupta and others. In this, the national creditors the reason for not for not a recovery law. And Binani Industries Limited versus Bank of Baroda and another's, it was said like while at the time of recovery leads the CDA to death. So the resolution endeavors to keep the CD alive, and also the court prohibits and discourages the recovery in several ways. So the NCLAT further stated that the first order objective is resolution, and then second order objective is maximization of the value of the firm, and third order objective is promoting the entrepreneurship and the availability of credit and balancing the interests. So when the stakeholders are not treated equally. So the distribution of realization under the resolution plan, it has been a bone of contention in several CIRPs and caused the prolonged litigations and also this undue delay in the competition of the process. So, occasionally distributing this pre-insolvency entitlements of creditors, and the myth that operational creditors are at the lower level when compared to other creditors of this CD. So, corporate debtors, it was they was dispelled from this code and was amended by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code in the Amendment Act 2019 to provide this operational creditors so that they shall be paid not less than the amount payable to them in the event of liquidation of the corporate debtors, or the amount payable to them if the realization under the resolution plan was distributed in accordance with the priority in this liquidation waterfall, and whichever it is higher. So this means the operational creditor should not be paid less than the amount they would have received in the event of this liquidation of the corporate debtors. So uh, we can take SR Steel India Limited versus Satish Kumar Gupta and others. In this, Supreme Court has emphasized that protecting these creditors in general is no doubt an important objective, but protecting the creditors from each other is also important. So, if any equity for all approach the recognizing the rights of the different classes of creditors, so as part of this insolvency resolution process, it is adopted and secured the financial creditors will also be in this main case. So, if you see this, many companies are getting liquidated. So the success of a code is often adjusted by the number of CIRPs ending with the resolution plan versus CIRPs ending up with this liquidation. So at the end of March 2020, uh, nearly 57% of CIRPs which were closed ended in 8 Indian insolvency law liquidations when compared to 14% ending up with the resolution plan. So while these strategies uh, under this code falling short of achieving this intents the objectives of the resolution of corporate debtors. So it is most important to note that the companies rescued had assets valued to about 2000 nearly not 2000, it is nearly like 900 billion. So when the companies referred for this liquidation, it held assets which which that has been rescued for more than 4 times. I think so. I was not clear about this. So it was like more than 4 times. So in the value of terms, the assets have been rescued for more than 4 times before sending this for liquidation. So nearly 72% of CRP spending in liquidation. It was earlier with the Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction, and where it was deepened. So the economic value is the most for these corporate debtors, and also for the uh, corporate debtors and also for the financial creditors. So the code deals with certain legacy issues passed by this legislation, and it is also it also envisages that the higher percent of
Bhavya,
CIRP.
please wind it up, no? They are taking a long time.
After this, I'm going to conclude this. Done.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
So once the CIRP is initiated and the market discovers if the market discovers this process should not be initiated. So the code allows the termination of process with the approval of the COCs by 90% voting power before the construction of COCs. And I'll go for creditors which are taking the huge haircuts. So the code focuses on the resolution of the corporate debtors is to maximize the value of the assets of corporate debtors. When this resolution plan is approved by the COCs, which comprises with the financial creditors, it reflects the value with that of the COCs attracts to the corporate debtors. And the resolution plan is not binding on the government. So this code actually provides that the resolution plan approached by the AA, it is binding on the corporate debtors, uh, its members and the creditors and other shareholders also. So you can take example, refer the case Director General of Income Tax versus the Synergies Dure Automotive Limited and others. In this, the NCLAT settled the tax due being the operational debt and the government is an operational creditor. So a resolution plan which settles this dues of the creditors, it should be binding on this government. And there have been the instance where this government followed up for the balance dues after the approval of the resolution plan. So this was creating the uncertainty and discouraging the potential resolution applicants. Under this code, once a resolution plan is approved, it is binding on all the shareholders. And this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Amendment Act 2019, it aimed to capture the spirit of specifically providing that a resolution plan will also be binding on the central government or the state government or any local authority to whom a debt is respect of payment of dues is owed. And then last one is direct liquidation is not allowed. So the code does not permit a shareholder to initiate this liquidation process directly. So it empowers the COC to decide to liquidate a corporate debtor at any time during the time of CIRP. And the COC may vote for liquidation in their first meeting or even preparation before the preparation of information memorandum also. So we can refer the Punjab National Bank versus Siddhi Vinayak Logistics Limited. So where in this the NCLT insisted that the liquidation order may be passed only after the failure of CIRP or to yield a resolution plan. So there are instances where the early liquidation would maximize this value, and also for the running the entire CIRP, it would be fertile. So thus I can say that the law which enables the initiation of CIRP, which would end in a resolution plan or the liquidation, it was decided by the shareholders. In addition to this, The code also provides that a corporate person who actually intends to liquidate itself and has not committed any default may initiate this voluntary liquidation process proceedings. Before this, when the liquidating the corporate debtor, it is more economically valuable option. So the shareholder, including the corporate debtor itself, so they may choose to do whatever, whenever they want, and whatever they want. So I'll conclude like actually the legal framework of this insolvency and bankruptcy, it impacts a number of economic indicators such as this uh, credit growth and job, and also in job preservation, the employment creation, and the entrepreneurship in return. So overall, this economic growth, it also causes behavioral chances in terms of affecting the willingness of investors, banks, companies, and entrepreneurs to take risks, and also causing the behavioral changes. So, in some form, it was addressed by modern or comprehensive insolvency and bankruptcy law. The implementation of this code has started the demonstrating the results on each of these fronts, and as the new regime matures. So, it was progress is likely to be visible to all. Thank you. Sir.